Hey guys, welcome to CaffeinatedHax. There have been some questions about how to get a basic Kali virtual machine set up and running on your system, and how to get a vulnerable server set up as well for your attack, your home lab. So today I'm going to go through that and I'm going to show you guys how to set it all up. So that'll include where to get your VM management software, your virtual machine management software, getting your Kali Linux, installing it, configuring it, making sure it works, pulling down a vulnerable VM from VulnHub, and I'll show you where that is, setting up that vulnerable VM, and finally we'll test the connections, make sure everything works. And then you can start hitting it. So let's get to it. First off, what is a virtual machine, or a VM? You can think of it as a fully fledged system within your computer, something like a sandbox. You can install any operating system you want on it, just like a machine, but virtual. Think of similar like an emulator. It doesn't really know about your actual computer. It will think it's the only thing on the disk, and is very useful for spooling up a server here or there, moving them around, things like that. Cloud providers actually use them quite a bit. Like Amazon's AWS will use virtual machines for like you might hear of instances, and those could be VMs behind the scenes. Those are just VMs. And if you pay extra, you can get a whole dedicated box, the hardware and everything, right? So that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes. So step one, we'll need software to manage our virtual machines. There are two types that are generally well known and are both free. One is called Oracle VirtualBox, and the other one is VMware Workstation. So I have them both already installed. So you can see here, this is what the icon looks like for VM Workstation. I'm running Workstation 15 player. And we can also see that Oracle VM VirtualBox is running. My examples today will be using VirtualBox. For VMware Workstation, it's very similar. The configs are very similar. Note that there are some caveats, some pluses and minuses to using either or. VMware Player does not have some of the features that will keep you safe, like virtual networks. And we're going to set one of those up in VirtualBox. That's why I chose VirtualBox. You can get that feature, but you got to pay. So you don't get it in the free version. This big one being a host-only network. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. This makes sure that your VMs can only talk to each other and the host, so they can't really spread out all over your network. They're not considered just another appliance on your network and talk to your router and outside. What's nice about that is if things get away from you, things are relatively self-contained. That's pretty important when we're talking about, say, security things or vulnerable VMs in the first place. You also have this concept called bridged mode, which I'm also going to show you, and that's exactly what I was describing before, where this thing just acts like another appliance on your network. It contacts your router, your home router, directly, and your router thinks it's just another machine on the network. So you may see it as, hey, your laptop, and then also your vulnerable server when you go into your router and look at all the connected devices. That's what a bridged device would look like. And we're going to do both of those. So VirtualBox does have these features. That's why I'm going to use them. So essentially VMware is a choice that will make things a lot easier. Actually, it's got some really nice features for making things just really seamless. But you will have to run things in bridged mode, which means you get a bit of risk involved with that as well. VirtualBox, you have to do a little bit of finagling, you have to do some tweaking, but you can run in a safer mode once things are there. So I'm going to show you the VirtualBox mode because that's a bit easy. Like once you know that, you can go the easier route for sure. All right, so let's get back to our tasks. So if you haven't already, you need to download Workstation 15, or I'm going to say VirtualBox. And so it's really easy if you just Google it. Oracle VM VirtualBox, download it, go and install it. It might ask you to install some USB drives. That's actually pretty common because you can think of this like that emulator idea where it's actually going to be emulating ports like USB drivers and so on. And that's just part of the process. Don't be surprised if you see that, but run through this install and get it up and running, and then I like to chuck it on my taskbar here. And once you're done that, you can move on to the next step. The next step is to get Kali. So Kali Linux it's a Debian-based Linux installation. It has just a bunch of tools pre-built in it. It's really nice. Some of these tools are actually quite hard to install, so having a Linux distribution with them all installed is quite nice. That being said, it is quite bloated, so if you're looking for something lean and only has a few tools, well, Kali's not what you're looking for. Everything you can get on a normal Debian distribution, you might have to be a little technically inclined to be able to install it all, but you can do it on a lean box if you want. But if you just Google Kali, usually the top one's going to be kali.org. Go there, and you're going to go to downloads, download Kali Linux. NetHunter is actually for your phone. You can get a nice phone distro, so that's nice. But we're gonna get a VM, so you're gonna get your Kali downloads, and you're gonna see a bunch of downloads here. So these are all installers. We don't actually want installers. What we want is near the bottom here. You can see these are preset virtual machines, so that we don't have to set up a VM all by ourselves. We can just pull one of these down and be done with it. And so I have VirtualBox, and I have this 64-bit VirtualBox. So I'm going to go here and be careful about this. It says VMware images. I don't want those. I want the VirtualBox images. And you go download the OVA. That'll be the file format. It's about 3.6 gigs. Here's your checksum. You can torrent it, or you can download it just from their mirror. This will take a while, so go do that now. And I have already done that. I have that on my desktop here. And when you guys have done downloading that, we can move on to the next step. Once your Kali OVA file is downloaded, if you have VirtualBox installed, you can double click on that. There should be an icon, should automatically kind of pick it up, and Oracle VirtualBox will try and import it. So there's a couple of things we need to do here. Right out the gate, let's take a look at MAC addresses. We're going to generate new MAC addresses for all network adapters. That's just a general good practice. You can use the defaults here, but also, even though we just double clicked it, it doesn't pick it up. So we have to go find it, and I chucked it on my desktop, so here's that OVA file. So how I did that again was we actually have to find that source file. So I'm going to, where's it, desktop. There's that OVA. Open it. Now we can import it. Let's do that. This one comes with the terms of view, or basically a license. Yes, we agree to license this GPL. And this might take some time. It'll say something like 2 or 3 minutes, but you'll see that in a second or two it'll kind of like bump up, and then it'll just almost complete right away. This process is very similar for VMware as well, if you're doing VMware, but I'm doing it with VirtualBox. And there you go, you can see it's kind of running way faster now. And we'll just wait for this to finish up. Come on. There we go. And you'll see things have kind of kicked us into the main VirtualBox window here, and we've got a nice little VMware there first. First thing we're going to do, open up the settings. So this is selected. Click Settings. And this is the VM's settings. Right down here it says invalid settings detected. Sometimes it doesn't like USB drivers. Just kick that back to 1.1 and that'll get rid of it. Right now we're running on a NAT drive, or a NAT network adapter. That's fine. We're going to chuck one more, although before I do that, some of you might have to create, if this is a brand new install of VirtualBox, you might have to create a new host-only adapter. And how you do that is you click on File, and you go to Host Network Manager. And I already have one here, but if you don't, click Create, and it might ask you for some information. Well, it might have to run as admin because it's creating a brand new network adapter. So it has done that, and you can see over here the IP address it's given it, the range is, the one that I'm going to work with is 192.168.56/24, right? So all these IPs here. The one I just created though was 192.168.20, and then /24. So all of the 255 or 256 IPs here. Note it's not enabled. You will have to enable yours if you just created a new one. And you shouldn't have to do too much with this IP, the IP ranges. It should automatically pick those up. But switch over to a DHCP server, and if you haven't enabled it, enable it. What that will do is that'll automatically assign IPs for you. Because I already have one here, it's already automatically doing it. I'm not going to do this, but that's just to show you. So if I'm going to remove this one I just created, and so you should have your enabled DHCP server, and it's just an enabled drive with, it will most likely be a 192.168.56, but make a note of what that third octet is, because that's going to be important. And once you're done, you can exit out of that. If apply is there for you, you can click apply, otherwise just close. And I think I actually have to, yeah, I didn't save that setting, so I'm going to go kill that USB 2.0 and just do 1.1. Now I'm going to go to network. I'm going to keep the one network adapter as NAT. I'm going to go to another one. I'm going to create another network adapter, host only. And it should pick up that one that we created. That's going to be important because this is going to be that internal network that we're going to do our hacking on with that vulnerable VM. Once that's done, click OK. Let's boot it up. You click Start. Depending on how fast your computer is, this may take some time. All right. So here it is booted up. Password is Kali, or username is Kali. Password is Kali. K-A-L-I. K-A-L-I. If you're going to use this as a long-term virtual machine, it's worth changing that password. And it should auto-resize when you make it bigger. Sometimes it doesn't, and if it doesn't, try taking that corner and dragging it, and it'll force the resize, and then you can expand it. Sometimes that saves you a lot of trouble. All right, first thing we're going to do, open up a terminal, which is right here, and make sure you guys can see this. And I'm going to type sudo ifconfig. And remember, our password is Kali. Why I want to check that out is I want to make sure my Ethernet adapters are running. So it looks like my 192.168.56 is running, but what's going on here? Nope. My NAT adapter is not running. And I know why. So right now, we can only have one network adapter running, and our host-only network adapter is running, right? Here's that 192.168.56. So we're going to have to enable Ethernet 0, and we're going to have to make it basically hot pluggable. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that in here, in Kali. In this same terminal, we are going to sudo vim etc network interfaces. It should bring something like this up. So the path that I took is here. So I am sudo vimming it. So Vim is a text editor. You can use any text editor you want. I'm used to Vim. There's Nano. There's a bunch here. Just make sure that you sudo it because you will have to access it with superuser. And what am I going to do? I'm going to add an entry. So I'm hitting I just hit I because now you can see it change to insert mode if you're following along in Vim. And now I need to put an entry in here. I'm going to allow hot plugging on the Ethernet 0 adapter. So that is the adapter that we created that isn't connecting, right? Because that was our NATed network drive or adapter. So that is the one that we want to be able to connect to the internet with. But right now we can't, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to allow it to get hot plugged. And we are also going to enable DHCP. Alright, so yeah, just enable hot plug for that adapter and enable DHCP for that adapter so that we can give it an IP address, right? This will be a local IP address. So I'm going to hit escape, and you can see that the insert mode disappeared. And I'm going to hit shift colon, right? We're going to create a colon, and then WQ. Enter. Now it's saved. Now the next thing we need to do is stand up our adapter. Oh, I need to sudo this. You'll see that right now it's not set up. There's no IP address given. Nothing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to stand that up. And how you do that is sudo if up your adapter eth0. In my case it's eth0. Yours might be different. I doubt it, but in case it's not, maybe it's one that isn't working, you should be running this all with eth1, including the edits you made to etc/network interfaces. Hit enter. Looks like things are going all right. Let's go back up to ifconfig and take a look. Oh, look at that. So we've got a 10. We've got a local. So now you can see we've got 192.168.56. That's our local host-only adapter. Here's our NATed adapter, which means we should have internet through that one. So let's ping Google. There we go. So now we have basically, well, we have two network adapters on this machine. One points out to the internet. The other one is only connected to VMs in our little subnet, which is nice and protected. So this just helps us kind of segment our network, and our Kali host, what we're working on right now, is actually working as kind of an edge host. It actually it's on two networks, right? It's on our home network where our router can see it directly, but it's also on this internal network that we've created for all of our virtual machines that are going to be vulnerable. All right. I'm going to downsize this for now because we have Kali up and running. All good. Now, let's get a vulnerable VM to hit. We need to find it and we need to download it. I have already found one, but I'm going to show you how to find it. There's a website called VulnHub, Vulnerable by Design. This is a really nice site. It is essentially a repository for vulnerable VMs. They are made by random people on the internet, so stay with the recommended or the popular ones. You don't want to get malware, so just they're low likelihood, but it's still there. You're downloading a rather large file off the internet from a random person who made it, and they are by definition vulnerable to something. So that's why we actually created that whole extra subnet, because we don't really want these things contacting the internet or being exposed. If you were to do this all in bridged mode, where is that router of yours at home would see everything, well, that's all fine when you're maybe at home and you don't care so much about your network. But if you're doing this, say, at a coffee shop, everyone at that coffee shop will see that. And if you know, there's some other people that aren't that nice and they're just trolling on the net, they're going to see a vulnerable VM, and then they might get a foothold onto your system or something like that. So just be careful with the bridge mode stuff. All right, so I'm going to look for a particular machine. The Cheoptrix family of machines. And you see there's a bunch here. Cheoptrix is, well, one, it's a whole family, and it's actually got different levels. It's got 1 through 5. There's a 5th one down here. They are a bit old. 2011, 2014 is the latest one. If you guys are running to do your OSCP, I highly, highly, highly recommend you run through all 5 of these. Start with the easiest. They're ranked from easiest to hardest. So start with 1, and then just work your way through to number 5. And then there's a whole list of other vulnerable VMs that are OSCP-like, and I recommend you hit those too. But this is kind of a classic family of vulnerable VMs. And so I'm going to take number 3. If we click on that, it brings us to Cheoptrix level 1.2, which is actually the 3rd one. And you see you get a bunch of information here. You can see when it's created, they've got a website, the names, and the authors. You've got your download links. I highly recommend the mirror. It seems to do pretty well to download your RARs. And it's very, very important to look at the description. A lot of times there's going to be some extra config you have to do to get this working. And so we actually have that in the Cheoptrix 3. That's why I chose it. And you can see that on your Kali machine, when you're hitting it, you need to edit your host file. And yeah, if you're on a Windows machine, it would be that. But essentially, you need to map that IP to Cheoptrix3.com. And that's pretty common. In Linux, basically in Kali, we're going to have to edit our etc/hosts file, and it's going to look exactly like this. Except for us, we're going to have to find the IP first. It's going to be a 192.168.56 for me, right? Because it's going to be on that subnet, and I don't know what the IP is going to be, but then we're going to just put that in there. And notice that's a space or a tab. I'll do that in the future. But so that's the config we have to do. We just have to keep an eye on that. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to download it. So you click that link, you wait for it to download. It's going to be a couple gigs. I've already downloaded it, so I'm going to move on. But if you haven't downloaded it yet, pause this video, download it, and then just replay it once you're done. Considering now, if you guys have downloaded it, let's set it up. And we're going to set it up very similar to how we set up our Kali virtual machine. Here, I've already extracted the Cheoptrix file. So if we open it up, we're going to see a VMX and a VMDK file. The VMDK file is the actual disk, and that's what we care about. So it's not an OVA, right? This one was an OVA. That was pretty easy to install into VirtualBox. The VMDK was a little bit different, or is a little bit different. So let's import it this way. Then you guys will know how to import things 2 ways, and these are the 2 most common ways. To do that, we're going to create a new VirtualBox VM. We're going to go here, and let's call it, I don't know, Key 03, right? Just something to differentiate it. And see here down on the bottom, we're going to say, hey, use an existing hard disk, and we're going to go find it. And I put it on, you have to add it. So click add, and it's on the desktop. There it is, Cheoptrix VMDK. Open that up. It's a 20 gig size, virtual size, but the actual size is pretty small. and it's already highlighted. Choose, and I like to keep the metadata actually useful. It's a 64-bit Debian-based system, and we've imported. We've clicked OK. So now, before we start this up, we need to add it to our subnet, right? We created that whole host-only adapter. We need to do the same thing for this one. Go to Network. See, it's natted. We don't want it natted. We want the host-only adapter. It's going to pick up the same one we want. We're going to click OK. If you wanted it to be bridged, you could. I don't recommend it. In a bind, maybe you can do that with other things. If you're running VMware, you'll have to run it in bridged mode because you have to pay to get your own subnets. We've clicked OK. And let's start it up. So I have downsized Kali, and now, so I'm running 2 virtual machines on this machine. And it will take some time. It looks like it's all booting everything up. These usually don't take too long to do. And bam. Okay, looks like it worked. And you can see right up here, it says IP Keoptrix3.com. That's because it's trying to find it by a domain name, and we need to go and change our host name to fix that. So let's go do that in Kali, right? So sudo vim etc/hosts, and here's the hosts file. You have to sudo to change it. And what was, I have to open up a new tab here. We need to find out what the IP is. So if you've seen the nmap video, you'll know this command. This is nmap sn, so I'm just going to do a quick scan. I'm not going to do any port scanning. I'm just looking for hosts on the 192.168.56 subnet. And so I'm just going to see what comes back. And there should only be 2. One should be myself, my Kali box, and the other one should be the vulnerable VM. And it looks like 2 has come up. I actually don't know which one I am. Which one am I? I am 108, 56.108, so that means 109 is the Keoptrix box. So copy that over, Control-Shift-C when you're in the terminal. Go here, Control-Shift-V, space. And what was, I just need to pull that. It is Keoptrix3.com, so go here, whoops, too far. And then, because we're in Vim, escape, Shift:/WQ, that's for write and quit, enter, and we're good to go. So what this did was this actually said, hey, we found it. So we know already that the vulnerable VM is on our subnet. It's where it should be. Now to test this, what we just changed, let's open up a browser. And we should be able to go to Keoptrix3.com, and it should bring us to this. And there you go. That is the vulnerable VM on your subnet. What's nice about this is I can also connect to the internet, even though, so this is on the subnet, the 192.168.56 subnet. This is using my NATed router going through the internet. So your Kali box can, it's got a foot in both worlds. And so let's kind of take a look. Now that we have both vulnerable, we have the vulnerable VM and we have Kali up and running. I have a bit of a network diagram here to show you guys what the heck's going on. classic paint. But what's going on? So this is my host machine. This is my Windows box, my actual physical machine. And what I have is I've installed VirtualBox, and it's got this little like sandbox around it. I've installed Kali with a bridged adapter that goes straight to my home router. That has access to the internet. What I've also done though is I've created a host-only network. So I've got, my Kali box has one network adapter, two network adapters. This one goes out to the internet. This one only talks to things inside this network. And that's where our target host is. So these two will only talk to each other. This one can't contact out unless something happens where it can go through here and then out, which unlikely. So that is the network that we just created. This is a pretty nice setup for any sort of basic stuff. This keeps you protected, right? Because this, if it was kind of malicious in any way, it's got to hop to your Kali box then out before it can even get to your own network. Like if you've got a bunch of like phones, TVs, and IoT devices on your home network, it's got to go through a bunch of steps before it can get there. So it's a nice segmentation of your network as well. So there you go. You can hit that box. You can go through some of the other videos that I have to scan that and see what's going on. But thank you for watching, and if you like what you saw, don't forget to grind some beans, boil some water, and hit subscribe. Thanks.